This guitar came from a timber, from the body of a tree, through the workshop of a luthier. Now it's on loan to me, and it's good company after dinner, and it fits my hands just fine. But someday another singer with a pair of hands like mine will coax out songs much prettier, still hiding in its strings. Sing strong.
Hey there, this is Tim Jackson. I'm your host for this new show in which we let artists talk about kind of whatever they want to. And we are happy to have Scott Cook as my guest for this particular show. So first of all, Scott, just welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Tim.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit of music, and then we'll kind of meander down the rabbit hole and some other subjects. But I wanted to talk first about your music and just talk about how I've done a deep dive into Scott Cook over the last couple of weeks. A shout out, I guess, to your publicist, Mike Farley. And I'll be honest, I had not heard the name Scott Cook prior to a couple of weeks ago.
That's why I'm working with Mike.
and then by the time we finished with "Say Can You See," which is the fourth song, I'm totally hooked on this album. And then after we get through those songs, I start going down and looking at videos and stuff from before, and then I'm sad because I'm like, why haven't I known about this guy for a dozen years or so? Because this is your eighth album?
This is my seventh, yeah.
Seventh?
Yeah, and
Okay.
it has been about a dozen years that I've been full time, but
Right.
but it's a big world,
It is, and we'll talk about that a little bit too, in some of your travels and such. But I really do. I love the album. The album is called "Tangle of Souls," and it's gonna be due out end of July, early August.
August 7th, yeah.
August 7th. Okay, and so we definitely would encourage everybody to go out and buy that as soon as it's available, Tangle of Souls. And then I understand that there's a book connected with that. Tell me a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, so I've kind of, I guess I got a bit of a problem with liner notes. They've been gradually increasing in size. I was starting with little booklets that would go inside the CD cover,
Right.
and the last record I put out, it had a 132 page book. A lot of it was pictures, but also the words and chords to the songs, and kind of a introductory essay just about what I've been up to these. At that time, I was at the 10-year mark of like living in the van and traveling around. So,
Right.
I just tried to tell the story of that, and I just found that a lot of people were really interested in that. In a time when CD sales, all my comrades are telling me that their CD sales are down and that sort of thing.
Right.
That kept bringing people to the table, and they wanted to take it home and read it, yeah, so that just that's kind of encouraged me in that direction. But I got a little carried away this last time. I ended up writing a book. It's not really a picture book so much as it is just a book. Actually, this is the mock-up version that the printer sent me to kind of look it over. But yeah, it's a book anyway. Yeah, I'm just getting ready to put to press go with the printer. So they're ready to go, but I'm feeling like simultaneously excited and terrified about the whole thing, just because it's I mean, releasing albums into the world always feels like a big thing, but releasing my first proper book is even scarier.
Right. Well, yeah, that's a big test. And so logistically, how is that going to work if you are they two separate products, or if you buy the album, the book comes with it?
Oh
Or
yeah, good question. Yeah, the CDs just in the back, in an envelope in the back of the book. Some of them won't have CDs in them because they'll just come with a download code,
Right.
Or vinyl.
Okay.
So the vinyl's being pressed right now as well.
Right.
So either way, yeah, they all come with a book, and then just whatever format people want the music in, and
Okay.
then the chapters are titled after the songs,
Right.
and they're kind of just whatever rabbit hole I went down thinking about the song.
Right. And the album has 12 songs on it, so I
Hmm.
assume that means 12 chapters in the book.
Yeah, there's an afterword as well, and
Okay.
an introduction, yeah, and then
Oh,
words and chords to the songs, and
right.
kind of
And
some an annotated bibliography.
okay, that's thorough. I like that. As a longtime writer and editor, I appreciate that attention to detail there. So, and in a post-factual world, you're actually putting it out there. Like, here are the sources. So there you go.
Yeah, I even got footnotes in it, and
Okay,
yeah.
that's good. That is impressive these days, for sure. Well, again, just a little bit about the album. Tangle of Souls does have 12 songs, and it's a really interesting album. A lot of kind of ebbs and flows in terms of kind of stylistically. Obviously it falls into that sort of Americana world, folk a little bit. The first song, like I said, is something a little different that you might hear at the country store. And then you've got um, Say Can You See is the current single,
Mm.
and I mean, it's a very powerful song, and one of the reasons why you're on this show is when I heard that, and it was just kind of, stop what you're doing and listen to the lyrics, because there's a lot there. Um, I want to invite you to play that song for us, but I guess before you do, just tell me a little bit about what your mindset was when you started to write that song, because there is a lot of sort of I guess condemnation about the system, and both sides of the political system, and where both sides seem to be keeping a lot of us down, as opposed to one side is good and the other side is bad. So tell me a little bit about what your thinking was when you came up with that song.
Yeah, I wouldn't want anything I say to invite sympathy for the Republican Party, uh,
Right.
but as far as conservatives in the United States, I know an awful lot of them. My family are mostly conservative.
Mhm.
I've got Trump voters in my family.
Mhm.
Um, and I think I felt, well, in going into the 2016 election, that there was this common feeling among American people that the system was rigged and wasn't working for them.
Mhm.
Um, Unfortunately, the only person really talking about that among the two candidates was Donald Trump, and he seemed to peel a lot of his talking points off of Bernie Sanders, who actually believed them,
Mhm.
uh,
Right.
and sort of, yeah, cynically manipulated that angle to win the election. I think, among other things. I mean, there's plenty of factors going into him getting elected. But I don't think we can pin it all on Russian bots. There's a lot more um, in the kind of in the Democratic Party's abandonment of working people. So that's what inspired me to write the song, and yeah, it's just a straight up piece of propaganda.
Mhm.
I wanted to, as I say in the book, I wanted to write a song. I was thinking about Woody, and I was thinking about Bernie, and I was thinking about AOC, and I was thinking of my relatives who voted for Trump, and I wanted to see if I could write a song that I could sing if all those Americans were in the same room.
Okay, sounds good. So this is the fourth track on the new album, upcoming album, Tangle of Souls. It's called "Say Can You See," and let's hear it, Scott.
Sure. I love this country. I love the people and the land. But there's a lot of stuff happening that I can't understand. We got billions for bailouts, we got trillions for wars, but it's hard for working people to make a living anymore. Hear me out for a second. This ain't a partisan song. It ain't about right and left. It's about right and wrong. We're fighting over the scraps while a few are living like kings. 'Cause screwing us over's a bipartisan thing, and it's working people who made this country great, not the greedy opportunists or the peddlers of hate. A new day's coming, it's gotta come from you and me. Oh, say, can you see? See, I got a neighbor, we don't always agree. He's a bit of a redneck, according to a hippie like me. But if you're in the ditch, he'll pull you out, I know he will. And that's more than I can say for all those dickheads on the hill. He works hard for his family, he's got loyalty and pride. The company took all he gave and then cast him aside. 'Cause there's profit in poverty, hell, there's profit in prisons. And they don't even pay taxes, they just buy politicians. But it's working people who made this country great, not the greedy opportunists or the peddlers of hate. The new day's coming, it's gotta come from you and me. Oh, say, can you see? Oh, say, can you see? And in New York Harbor, there's a lady with a flame, still calling in the huddled masses in liberty's name. But there's fear on the airwaves and hatred wrapped in the flag, turning strangers into enemies and our riches into rags. And a revolution to break the grip of greed don't need a strong man or a savior, but I believe we're gonna need whatever magic this old world's got left to start, and all the ammunition in the chambers of our hearts. It's working people who made this country great, not the greedy opportunists or the peddlers of hate. If a new day's coming, it's gotta come from you and me. Oh, say, can you see? Oh, say, can you see?
It is a fantastic song. Like I said, as I started listening to Tangle of Souls, by the time I got through with that one, which is just the fourth track, I was completely sold. And let me ask you about a line, because you talk about fear being peddled in our media, about that. And I know that you support and consume a lot of the same media that I do, which is Jacobin, Democracy Now!, The Guardian, places like that. Why do you feel it is so important to support those types of media organizations?
Well, because they're all people funded. You know, they don't really. I mean, Guardian is definitely a big company, of course, but they're all kind of running on that people powered model, and that allows them to cover things in a way that might frankly offend a lot of potential advertisers. So. I'm not rich, as you mentioned. I'm a musician,
Right.
but I figure if I have extra money, I ought to throw it to causes I believe in, and those are some of those. Jacobin, I find just really kind of mm, gives a real sturdy theoretical backing to a lot of viewpoints that I align myself with.
Mhm.
Um, and then Democracy Now! Is a thing I've been tuning into for years and years. They played a real part in my kind of political awakening in the first place.
Mhm.
I remember a long time ago, they syndicate the show on our local college station, and
Okay.
I remember a long time ago listening to their coverage of the election, their coverage of the media's coverage of the election debates. And God, this is ages ago, so I don't even know. It was probably Bush and Kerry or something. I don't know. Anyway, they were just talking about how analyzing the coverage. It was like they seemed to be talking a whole lot about how the candidates looked and what sort of emotional tenor they were projecting or whatever, and no one was talking about the positions of the candidates. And that sort of began me, I guess, my process of beginning to look at media with a critical eye.
Mhm.
And so yeah, over the years, I've always tuned into Democracy Now, and I've listened to it long enough that I can kind of see their bias too. But I really appreciate the coverage of global events that they have on there, and also just the stories about real acts of heroism and lives of heroism lived by people that I otherwise wouldn't have heard of. Quite often it's on the occasion of their death that they're given a retrospective about these people that I've never heard of. But I feel like there's not enough stories about people doing heroic things
Mhm.
in the mainstream media, and there are so many people doing so many heroic things, and I guess it doesn't serve the interests of the powers that be to remind us of our potential for heroism. But yeah, it's for all those reasons that I feel like they're it's real valuable work that they do, and that's why I want to support it.
And I know that, you talked about those organizations and Democracy Now, for instance, talking about some of the um, political, social things that are important to you. And I know one of those is climate change, and where we are on that. And I should point out to our viewers that you have dual citizenship, US and Canada, born in the US in West Virginia, currently living in Alberta in
Hmm.
Canada, in Edmonton. And I know you've also traveled extensively as a musician. Saw a video of you down in Australia. I read a piece on van life, and I think you were in Laos at the time that you
Mm.
wrote that. So I know you traveled the world. So how do you think both being a dual citizen, but also a global citizen, and having traveled so much to so many other places, Asia and Europe, Australia, obviously the US and Canada, how has that sort of supported your views on climate change and sort of the bigger picture?
Yeah, well, there's two sides to that question, I guess. Uh, in the first place, I'm reminded of the Mark Twain quote, about wholesome, charitable, broad-minded views of the world, and people can't be formed by staying in one corner of it all your life. And definitely, I feel like traveling around. I lived overseas for a while as well. I lived in Taiwan for 6 years,
Mhm.
and getting to know people with really different worldviews and different ways of life has really informed my own understanding, and I'm so grateful for it. On the other hand, I guess when we talk about climate change, that's something that's a big part of what I'm talking about in the book, is my own kind of reckoning with that. Um, because the sort of I can see the insatiability and the busyness that's characterized my own career
Mhm.
as really emblematic of what our society's like and what we've done to the world. And so yeah, it's got me asking some big questions. Definitely about the pace of my own touring. I committed during the course of writing the book. I committed to making my tours carbon neutral, and I've been paying money to Rainforest Foundation US and some other groups to try and offset those emissions. But that's such a small part of the big picture, and it's kind of in itself it's a mark of privilege to be able to, for rich people to pay for luxuries that poor people can't afford.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's bigger questions and all that, but I guess the clearest answer for me is just to slow down, um, and kind of looking at my own touring and how often I'm rushing through places and because I've got miles to cover before the next gig, and rushing through beautiful landscapes and rushing through beautiful communities that I'm welcomed into, all too briefly.
Mhm.
Um, just kind of yeah, kind of feels symptomatic of the larger problem. So I'm looking at ways that I can tour slower and tour closer to home, because I know there's a ton of people in this city who've never heard of me
Mhm.
and never heard my songs, and it's not like I need to go to the other side of the world to sing them for people. And also just looking at ways that I can be of use to the communities that I pass through, like offering songwriting workshops and seeing how I can get involved or find out what's going on and kind of amplify those things, because quite often I feel like even in local communities, people are unaware of each other and the work that they're doing, and um, and I know that music already serves that purpose to bring those people out of the woodwork and bring them together and get people talking and hanging out, but I feel like it can do it even better if I move slower.
Right. Right. And I guess let's go ahead and sort of wrap up with just thoughts again. Dual citizen and have traveled the world pretty extensively and lived in other places. Uh, we're in an election year, and I would love to hear kind of your opinion. Um, and I'll preface this by saying I have some sort of weird obsession with the country of New Zealand that I can't really explain. I've never been there. um, but I like completely, like half of my Instagram feed is New Zealand's, accounts. Um, but anyway, so you look at sort of the leadership of a 39-year-old woman there and how they handled the COVID crisis and pretty much have wiped it out. And then you look at our current situation and so many other things, gun violence and things like that. So just kind of from your perspective, I mean, what is the viewpoint of the of Canada and the rest of the world, places that you've lived, places that you've traveled, of the US right now in our current sad, laughable situation with this election coming up?
Wow. Well, I'm similarly in awe of New Zealand.
Yeah.
There's so much to admire about the way they do things there, and their leader, Jacinda.
Yeah.
The relationship with the indigenous people of New Zealand is also just a whole different ball game from what we've got here in Canada or in the United States. Um, and yeah, we were over there in January, and it's an amazing country.
Right.
Um, Canada, we're I kind of think of Canada and the States as one big country. Canada and the U.S. and Mexico, I kind of think of as one big country because we certainly, we're on the same piece of land and we
Right.
certainly sink or swim together. So I think I might be unduly focused on American politics, but that's just because I think a lot is hanging on this upcoming election, and yeah, you know, I've got a lot of friends who just kind of write the country off, or write off the people who support Trump, and just think, you know, you can only do that if it's because you're a racist, you know. And certainly there are people who support him because they're racist, no doubt about that. But I think there's a lot more to it than that, and I haven't written off America yet, and I think if America goes down, we go down too. So yeah, my main concern with this election is just that everyone actually gets to vote, that we actually have an election,
Right.
And I see a lot of kind of dominoes being put up right now that seem part of a bigger plan of disenfranchisement, and seeing it already in the primaries and just now in Kentucky, and the whole thing around vote by mail, and the sort of uncertainty around the survival of the U.S. Postal Service. I think all those things are big parts of the of my worry about November, and but I think if people can vote, I think Trump's going to lose. I mean, I think he's kind of confessing so in all the ways he's talking about not letting people vote.
Right.
You know.
Well, yeah, it's definitely an interesting few months we have ahead of us, and it is such strange times, and then to have an election in the midst of all this, and there certainly seems like as you've mentioned, a lot of things that can be barriers to voting, between COVID-19, the Postal Service, other disenfranchisement, and Kentucky closing so many polling stations. It's definitely a fascinating thing to watch and be a part of, although mostly it's in horror as we watch, but it is fascinating to be part of, I guess. But anyways, Scott Cook, I definitely appreciate your time and energy to be a part of this and to sing a song for us. A great song, Say Can You See. I hope everybody listens to this album when it comes out. Tangle of Souls will be out in August, so not too far away. Order it on vinyl, get the CD, make sure you get the book, get the whole thing. Everybody needs to just buy the whole thing. And hopefully we'll see you back on the road with as small of carbon footprint as you can have. But hopefully you'll be back on the road before too much longer, and your fans can see you there as well.
Thanks, Tim. It'd be great to meet in the flesh someday.
That's right. I definitely hope to do that, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Cheers.
Pass it along. May it land in careful hands when we're gone. You carry it for a moment. Time won't loan it to you for long. You don't own it. Pass it along. And I still love my country. Sometimes it's hard to recognize it, but I count myself lucky to have been born inside it. And I'm grateful for the rights others struggle hard to win. You can be sure I'm gonna fight when they try and take them back again.